What's going on, y'all? It's your girl, Mary B. Welcome back to another episode of Something's Gotta Give. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about PTSD, which stands for post traumatic stress disorder. Growing up, I always heard this term only used for people who were involved in the army and how they would have such traumatic experiences out in war and they would come home and they would constantly be reliving the memories that they had during their time of war. And that's all I really knew about PTSD. And when I started seeing my therapist 2 years ago now, I had a screening, and one of the results that came back from the screening was that I was diagnosed with severe PTSD, which came from my childhood. So my childhood was essentially a war zone. And I laughed, but it's not funny because I was always told growing up, the past doesn't matter. It's never that serious. You can't be stressed out as a child. What do you know about stress? Nothing is that ever big of a deal. This isn't going to really be impacting you one day. One day you'll all of a sudden be an adult, and all of these things that are happening in your childhood will just be a little vague memory. And so I tried so hard for that to be the truth of my life, and it just wasn't. And when I got diagnosed with PTSD, a lot of it made sense because I had a really hard time with being present. I will never forget. I would say about a year ago, one of my friends that I went to high school with in Virginia was living in Los Angeles doing film school. And we're both about 28, right? And we've lived a lot of life since we knew each other when we were like 15 years old. And so talking to him, I'm telling him about where I've been. And I remember I was at some point in our conversation reflecting on homecoming week and how it used to be my favorite week because we had Spirit Week that week leading up to the big football game, which then led up to the beautiful dance. And school activities were the highlight of my life. It was like my escapism from the reality of what was going on at home. So I was really, really excited every single time Spirit Week and homecoming came around. And I remember telling him the story, and he said to me, "Wow, it's like you're still right there," or something among those lines. And it kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I don't know if he meant to be offensive. I really don't think he meant to be offensive, but it kind of just shocked him at how vividly I remember this period of our life, because technically that was over 10 years ago. How am I so attached to a memory that was so long ago when we were kids? I should be talking to you about what's going on presently, but I really struggled with anything that was in the present. And so the only way I could continue on with my life is like bringing things from my past forward. And I didn't know that I was doing that. I was doing that subconsciously. And I remember telling my therapist about the conversation that I had with him. And my therapist was like, "I know he didn't mean to be spiteful, but he's right. Wouldn't you say?" And when I heard her say that, like the wheels in my head really started to turn because, wow, I do live in the past so heavily. And I was recreating my present day from everything that happened in the past. I was trying to fit in things that happened before into the present because I didn't know how to be present, because my traumatic experiences were all I could ever think about. How I got through my traumatic experiences was all I could ever think about. So the coping mechanisms that I created when I was a child to help me get through life was the same coping mechanisms and the same reality I was making for myself as an adult. And many people don't talk about the possibilities of healing PTSD. Many people don't think it's possible to heal PTSD, but it is. And I'm here to share with you how I've been able to heal a part of my brain that I thought I would never be able to alter, to change. Realizing that I have a thing with the past, I have to force myself to create a new reality. I have to force myself to be uncomfortable every single day. And I've had to change every detail of my life. So everything holds energy, right? When I really started to understand that, I started to change things. So at the beginning of 2024, I told myself, I don't want to have so much access to past versions of myself when I'm trying to create a new version of myself in a future that I desire. So I bought an external hard drive and I transferred every single photo, video, whatever content that was on this phone to that external hard drive, and I completely gave myself a new phone. And it has been so helpful. I think with the way our life is connected to technology, it is so easy to go and remember and relive and reconnect to something that is meant to be in the past. And because I have PTSD, our new way of life makes it that much more difficult for me to realize that is in the past and I'm not there anymore. I love every version of myself that I've been, wounded or not. But I don't need that version of myself to be at finger lengths distance from me. I need to create space. So transferring all of the old data, all the old versions of myself essentially to an external hard drive gave me peace of mind and allowed me to be more present than I've ever been, because I know if I still have desires to go look at the past and reflect and remember, or that I need to find something, I know that I can. And it's very simple because all I have to do is plug in this external hard drive into my computer and I have my information. But it's not that I have it with me daily when I get on my phone. You know how our phone has this thing where it creates memories for you. Every social media app is always creating memories for you, on Snapchat, on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. Like, it's always showing you reflections of what you were posting about in the past. And for me, I can't visit that too often because it's so easy for me to embody that character anymore, because past versions of myself didn't know who I was. So I was attaching my identity to whatever I could to make me feel safe. Another thing that I had to do with healing my PTSD is rearranging my style, my clothes, and my home. I have essentially a whole new wardrobe. I have a very vivid memory. I can literally remember an outfit that I wore to a dinner date. I can remember the purse that I wore when I went to a beach that day. I can literally remember my first day of school outfit when I first went to high school. And so trying to change my life and changing who I am and being more caught up with the present, I let go of clothes that held onto memories that no longer served me. Doing this has allowed me to be able to put on clothes that I identify with being the best version of myself. So yes, I've worn this sweater before, but I've worn it as the best version of myself that I'm proud of being. So it doesn't make me uncomfortable putting this sweater on. Whereas beforehand, my clothes was filled with hand-me-downs of people's clothes that I would end up having just because they gave it away, because I would go thrifting a lot. And that's secondhand energy, where I would be putting on other people's clothes and not feeling new, not feeling like myself, because it's really coming from a long line of other energies. I also would be wearing like big tees and sleeping shirts from friends or past lovers, and me constantly putting that clothes on is making me remember who I used to date or what friend I used to sleep over with. Like, if they're not here anymore, I can't keep on putting these clothes on because it's helping me remember, it's helping me stay in the past. So I would have to release the clothes that I was wearing. I gave away all of the clothes that my friends gave to me when I thought they were nice, but essentially I would look at these pieces of clothing, and I would be like, would I have bought this myself if I had the free will of spending whatever money I wanted on this item? All the time, the answer was no. I wouldn't have bought it myself. So being honest with myself and being like, okay, why are we keeping this if you wouldn't have bought it for yourself? It's keeping you attached to a friend that isn't around anymore. And it's also feeding into the mindset of me believing that everything comes in lack, that I have to keep this clothing item, that I can only accept things that are like hand-me-downs, because there was a version of myself that was very poor, that was super thankful for hand-me-downs. But this version of myself isn't poor. This version of myself doesn't need to accept hand-me-downs as the only way of having clothes on my back. So I cleared out my closet and I started buying items that I believe that I'm worth buying. I started actually creating a style that I know is truly fitting to the being that I am. I feel like past versions of myself, I was dressing like whoever was around me. So if my friend was a tomboy, I dressed like a tomboy. Oh my gosh, I just did not know who I was. So I was just trying to figure out who I was through my clothes, and my style was kind of like all over the place. I would have really baggy clothes to very tight clothes and everything in between. Like, there was no consistency in my style. And yes, I'm not a consistent person. I have many different personalities, but knowing who I am now, my overall style arc is boho. I'm very hippie-like. That is me. I like to be comfortable. I like to be loose. I like to be free. I do enjoy showing skin, but within minimalistic ways. And I own that. And I love that I'm confident and present enough to be able to create the style and show up for myself the best way the best way I've ever have. I also rearranged my studio so many times. Anytime I was going through a breakup or I was having a hard period in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I need something new, I would change the way my bed is or where my couch is or like the pillows or my comforter or move around my desk. Like, I would always switch things around because switching things around creates everything new. Oh my gosh, this is like a new apartment all over again. Let me be reacquainted with this energy, with this space. What do I now want to create with the space that I've created for myself? And so catching up to the present, sometimes you need to change, right? The present is always changing. The future is always changing. Your life is always changing. And for me, I have to be very active with that change because it is so easy for me not to know what to do with the present and allow past things to come forth and control my reality all over again. The last thing I really had to address in my life was my relationship with social media. I personally can't remain friends or actively engage with people of the past. I think the old school way of living with you had a friend in high school, you guys parted ways, you never talk to that person again. And it's okay. Your relationship did its purpose when you were 17, and it stayed in that part of your life when you were 17. And you were able to create space for all the new people, all the new experiences that came forth after that. For me, I still felt very attached to people that I met in the past that knew different versions of myself, old versions of myself that died, that would instantly come back alive when I would see what's going on in their life, when I would engage in messaging them, when I would engage in their content, or vice versa, them engaging in my content. I hate the pressure that social media has with us now, that we must remain friends with people even on social media, when the truth is, like, I don't even know you. There is no friendship here. I'm probably never going to see you again in my life. Why do I feel so imprisoned by this app to keep feeding into this false narrative of a friendship that has actually been died? And for me to heal my PTSD, I had to really release many people that I used to follow. And it's not in any type of malicious way. It's me catching up to the present of this person isn't actually in my life. Like, if I were to delete all of my medias today, I would never hear from them again. I would never know what's going on from them again. I would get really bothered when I would start remembering or thinking about people when I'm outside of the app, simply because I viewed their story, because I engaged in their content. I am someone that, like I told you, I have very vivid memory. And so things, whatever I intake, stays in my head. So I have to be very, very cautious of the things that I intake. I do. And with me being mindful of everything that I just listed, I can feel myself being more present than I've ever been in my entire life. Like, I often reflect and think, wow, my life has become so quiet. I've lost so many friends. I've lost so many lovers. I've lost essentially everything, but I've gained myself. I have gained myself through everything that I have lost, and I will lose it all over again to find myself, to find the presence that I am in. I never thought my brain would get to a place where it's not thinking about pain all the time. And I'm not doing things to run away from this pain. And I'm not letting memories of people telling me that stress isn't real as a child. And that it's not a big deal. Or, talking about the past doesn't help. Or talking period doesn't help. All of those were false narratives when it came to the truth of me. And I had to release. I have to continue to release to continue to heal my PTSD. And I'm proud that I have the courage to do things that may be temporarily uncomfortable for long-term longevity. I finally feel like I've grown up. I went throughout my 20s feeling like a child. I feel like I was never going to grow up. I did not understand how people just became adults. Like, I was literally just a child trying to survive in an adult body because my traumas were so bounded into my brain, into my body. I didn't know how to release. I didn't know what steps I needed to take to allow myself to release, to be present, to create who I am now. You're allowed to recreate yourself at any point in time of your life. Any point in time of your life. If you feel like I've outgrown this version of myself, but you keep living in that version of yourself because it's comfortable and because everybody around you and everything around you is keeping you to be that version of yourself, I do not recommend you keep playing house in your own body. Create the house. Don't play house. I hope you understood. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode. And for anyone else who suffers from PTSD, I think the best starting point is to just start talking about those horrid memories that you keep replaying in your head that you probably don't feel safe expressing the pain that it had on you. It's looking for a way out, which is why it keeps taunting you in your head. You owe yourself the freedom to release. You owe yourself freedom, period. Until next time, thank you so much.